I reached 2,000 subscribers 2 weeks ago, asked you to send in some questions, and you've sent in plenty. So let's ignore the fact that I'm way over that number at this point, because this is my 2,000 subscribers Q&A. Where are you from? What's your native language? I live in Eastern Europe, and my native language is Polish. How many languages do you know? Which ones would you like to learn? I know 4 languages pretty well and 2 more pretty badly, with my Japanese being especially bad, so that's the language that I would like to get actually fluent at. How did you learn Lożban? What resources and methods did you use? I started off using the crash course, but then moved on to studying the grammar from the complete Lożban language book. There's a whole bunch of resources on the Lożban wiki, but the biggest part of my learning process featured Anki and the Lożban example sentences I grabbed off Tatoeba. I used the full sentence flashcard method for studying, which is very effective and should work for any language. Will you be doing more videos in Lożban? Maybe, but if yes, then not on this channel. What are your favorite sounds, and what sounds do you find hard to pronounce? I really like and I tend to have a lot of trouble with the uvula sounds. You've told your opinion on Lożban, what about Tokipona? I think it's cute. What's your favorite color? Pink beige. What's your favorite book and your favorite movie? Anne of Green Gables and The Girl That Leapt Through Time. Where would you like to travel? What's the furthest you have ever been from home? I would like to visit Antarctica, but the furthest I've ever traveled is northern Poland. What got you into YouTube? How long do the videos take to make? What's your process? What tools do you use? Show us how you draw. Tell us who inspired you. I started making videos because I wanted to do something in Lożban. The first video took 5 months to make. The second video took 2 months, the third one took 2 weeks, and the fourth one took 1 week. The average English language video takes me about a week to make. I write the script, and then I make every individual frame in Photoshop. Then I record the audio in Audacity, and finally I combine the audio and the visuals in Lightworks. I draw using this tablet, and I do the line art in Photoshop, and apparently have great struggles with drawing feet. Then I ink it in Illustrator and struggle with feet again. And then I color it all in Photoshop, and then I'm done. I have mostly been influenced by anime and webcomics. What video are you proudest of? The first one, because it took so long to make and I had to create and illustrate so much stuff for it. It would have been really easy to just give up and then pretend that I had never intended to make any videos anyway. But I did get that video done and I'm proud of that. Where can I find your webcomic? It's on hiatus, so I don't want to link to it. Have you had any struggles with narrating videos in Lożban? I'm not fluent in Lożban, so in my videos I was basically putting up an act of being fluent, which was not easy, and even though I knew what I was reading as I was reading it, it was still difficult. Make a video all in Itlu. Even if we put the fact that this would be a lot of work aside, Itlu is just a naming language, and as you have seen in my videos, I have been using it as a naming language. It doesn't really have enough grammar for me to translate a larger body of text into it, and I don't know when it will have enough grammar for that. What do you find to be the most challenging part of conlanging? Creating new parts of grammar and not immediately hating them. I think it's just part of being new to conlanging. A lot of the time I just can't figure out something I could feel satisfied with, and it's probably going to be years before I stop having so much trouble with this. How important is it to develop an original language for your world? I would say it's important only if you personally think that it's important for the world you are creating, and the extent to which it's important is also up to you. How did you get into world building, and what was your first project like? If we restricted it to world building done for the sake of world building, then I got into it in 2015 after reading David Graeber's Dead, The First 5,000 Years, and then watching a bunch of lectures on mythology and anthropology. With all that, I felt like I knew what the building blocks of culture were, so I started arranging those blocks. And my first project was this world, which I based on the map of Neo-Pangaea. You present a world where international interaction is pretty much a non-issue. Have you made worlds where it plays a bigger role? I have, and that's the reason why I abandoned 2 of them and blew up the 3rd one. Trying to not only create many different cultures, but also to think through all the different interactions between those cultures. I think the only way to do it right is to have a whole team working on the same world, but that comes with all the usual issues that arise when working on collaborative projects. Which is why when I started building this world at the start of last year, I immediately decided to build something more manageable and self-contained. I would rather create a decent, isolated culture than a huge world that's missing a lot of detail that it should have. What is your guiding principle when creating new things? Novelty, theme, inspiration? It's mostly inspiration. Whatever I come up with goes into the world, but sometimes I deliberately go out of my way to come up with something new. Do you have any tips on creating unique life forms? Imagine a habitat and then imagine how something would adapt to survive in that habitat. It doesn't need to have all the most perfect defenses against all the predators. It simply needs to be able to survive long enough to reproduce. Where do you get your ideas? What resources do you use? For really small things, I just look them up online. But the thing is, I don't know what I don't know. There are many things I would never think to look up, so books are great. And my top 2 recommendations are The Golden Bough and Debt, The First 5,000 Years. What are your thoughts on bottom-up versus top-down approaches to world building? Building bottom-up makes it easier to make sure that everything stands on a solid foundation, and that solid foundation can often also lead to things one would not have otherwise considered. It's also easier to create something that feels new and fresh when building bottom-up, because then you aren't just grabbing whatever is capturing popular imagination at the moment, which can mean that you'll just end up creating obscure things that hardly anyone cares about. But that's not something I worry about, because are you planning on writing a book, making a game, making something? I created this world specifically to make a Loshban language series about world building. Yep, that's the entire reason why this world exists. And now I'm not planning on doing anything with it, other than making more videos. Will you be creating any characters to provide a subjective perspective on your world? Will you tell about the history? It would be really cool to make something like the Extra History series, but it would be called Con History, and it would be about some dramatic historical happenings from my river basin, but it would take me forever to make it if I worked on it alone, so maybe someday if I can hire another artist to help me out, I will make that series. Do you prefer hard or soft magic systems? Also, how do you feel about power creep? I don't have a preference because both soft and hard magic can be executed well. And when I think of power creep, I think of Dragon Ball, and that series remained awesome without much problem. Have you done any sci-fi world building? Have you designed any aliens? A few years ago, I wrote a script for a sci-fi graphic novel. It's set on a distant planet, so I had to think through what resources were available there and how this would affect the local material culture. And I've never made any aliens, but the world I'm working on right now does have plenty of room for strange animate things. What is the most pressing philosophical question for the people of your con culture? Material versus spiritual? Free will versus fate? Individual versus society? That would be human versus animal, civilized versus uncivilized, sophisticated versus uncouth. And there were a lot more questions about the world itself. They will all get answered as I make more videos. And I will be making a series about creating a hunter-gatherer culture next, and the first episode of that series will come out on the first Tuesday of October. So see ya in autumn!